Okay, well,
Okay.
I'm ready.
Okay, let me get you all centered in here.
Make sure my hair doesn't look too horrible.
Oh, actually, you look just fine.
Okay,
I am just so delighted to meet you in person.
it's great to be here.
I've read about you, I've heard about you so much. We're talking today at the Future Horizons Autism Conference in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and this is June of 2010. And I've just heard you give one of your typical wonderful speeches, entertaining, informative as always. Before you gave your talk today, you and I had a real brief conversation about some of your concerns about Aspergers in the workplace. We all appreciate the fact that there are people in the workplace today with Aspergers that are tremendously gifted and talented. But you'd expressed a bit of a concern about the future generation of these workers in that they're going to need some prep, they're going to need some more life understanding, they're going to need some more skills as it relates to living.
One of my big concerns, I work in the meat industry, I work in a lot of different industries, travel all around. I see a guy that's usually 40 and up, he's in IT, or maybe he's a plant engineer, he's a brilliant maintenance guy, he's inventing all kinds of equipment for a plant, and these guys are all undiagnosed Aspergers.
Mm-hmm.
Then I come to one of these autism meetings and I see a maintenance guy or engineer junior coming up to the book table, and that's not where he's headed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very concerned how the schools have taken out the hands-on classes, because that's where these kids can get turned on. If I hadn't had art when I was a young kid, I would have just gotten nowhere. If I hadn't had my science teacher, I would have gotten nowhere. Also, you got to push these kids some. Mother had me working when I was 13 years old. When I was 13 years old, I sewed dresses by hand 2 afternoons a week in the summer. She had to push me to go to my aunt's ranch. I was afraid to go.
Mm-hmm.
And she said I had a choice, 2 weeks or all summer. I was building things. I took care of 9 horses. I did internship in a research lab. I had a lot of work experience before I graduated. And I'm seeing too many smart Asperger types on the spectrum that have never even walked a dog or delivered a newspaper before and they have graduated from college and they have absolutely no job experience.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not becoming that brilliant inventor that builds all kinds of fabulous equipment.
Mm-hmm. So your point is to get them more exposed to a real job environment, such as when they're young, teach them how to walk a dog or
That's right.
do something else in the neighborhood.
They've got to learn how to do a task for somebody else. Broaden that fixation out into skills that other people are going to want and appreciate.
Your example of drawing horses that you gave in your presentation was that if you were focused on drawing a horse, your mother would say, "Why didn't you draw the pen the horse lives in?" Or things that were close akin to the horse.
Well, that's right, because if you can get an associative link into the kid's fixation, then that fixation still drives something like drawing the horse's pen or drawing the horse's barn or maybe drawing a place you might ride the horse to.
Mm-hmm.
You still have an associative link.
Mm-hmm.
But I know too many kids where all they're doing is just doing the same thing over and over again. I'm also seeing way too many smart kids that could be these equipment inventors. They could be like the next inventor for the Medtronic Corporation or Silicon Valley, and they're getting so addicted to video games, you can't get them to do anything else.
Mm-hmm. Now that schools are shutting down a lot of the art classes and the music classes, and in many cases even shop classes, how can parents help compensate for that? What would you advise parents of a high-functioning child with Asperger's syndrome?
Well, I think you're going to have to find some other place to do some of these classes. I think a lot of these classes now have moved into the community colleges.
Mm-hmm.
You can take auto shop in the community college. A lot of those good teachers that could be like my science teacher, they're over at the community college. Because you don't have to have a teaching certificate to teach at a community college. You just have to have the degree in whatever the subject is that you're teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got to get kids out and get exposed to those things.
There's a movie out about you. In your opinion, as it relates to telling the world about autism, what are the strongest points and the weakest points of the movie?
Well, the movie is very clinically accurate. It shows how my visual thinking mind works.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm a visual thinker who thinks in photorealistic pictures. Now, I want to emphasize that's not everybody on the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Some people on the spectrum are a word thinker. Others are kind of more a pattern, a music and math thinker that might have problems with reading. The thing about the autistic mind is it's specialist. Good at one thing, bad at something else. The movie was very good at showing my high anxiety. It was also very good at showing the sensory issues. The sensory overload in the cafeteria, they're cutting up the carrots and there's doors moving, all this sensory overload. It shows that absolutely perfectly. So in terms of just educating people about some of the symptoms of autism, I think it's really good. And it also shows how a mentor teacher, really helped me.
Makes a difference in somebody's life.
I think Claire Danes did a marvelous job. She became me back in the 60s and the 70s.
Mm-hmm. Were there any weak points? Anything that you'd like to correct after the fact?
Well, they were minor weak points. There was one where when the kid teased me, threw dirt on me in wood shop. Actually, where I had the problems, it wasn't in like doing an activity like wood shop. It would have been cafeteria or the parking lot where those things happen.
At Autism Hangout, I have a series of programs I do called feature programs. And one of them is Key Learnings of Autism Thought Leaders. If somebody were to ask you, what are the 3 key learnings that your life's experience has taught you about autism, what would those 3 key learnings be?
All right, first of all, we got to address sensory issues.
Okay.
For some people, sensory issues are so bad they can't tolerate normal environments. Fluorescent lights are flickering on and off like a discotheque. The loud sounds are hurting their ears. We need to be working on treatments for sensory issues. Another thing is just teaching basic life skills, things like table manners, how to shop. I'm seeing too many autistic kids today that can't go into McDonald's and order a hamburger. I mean, those sort of things I learned at a very, very young age. And we didn't have McDonald's when I was little, but we'd go into a sit-down restaurant and I could order off the menu. And I was even taught things like, well, if you're with other people, you look down at the prices and, don't order the most expensive thing. Even that kind of thing was taught. And the other big thing I'm concerned about is employment. What is a person going to do for the rest of their life?
Mm-hmm.
When these kids get around 11 or 12, we're going to start thinking about what are they going to do when they grow up? Now, if the smart, geeky kid's out in Silicon Valley, he gets apprenticed into the whole computer field. Those kids just get apprenticed in. But we need to be thinking about that a whole lot earlier. So those are my 3 big things: sensory, teaching just basic skills, and employment.
Excellent.
Let's talk about anxiety. I had terrible times with anxiety, and this might be something you might want to put on the web page.
Okay.
I take antidepressant medication to control the anxiety. And if I wasn't on antidepressant medication, I wouldn't be here now. And I find us visual thinkers, we tend to be some of the worst on having a lot of anxiety. I know a lot of people with a little tiny, teensy dose of Prozac can really make a difference. And the mistake is giving too much. I've talked to 100 parents that have said, oh, we worked great on a little dose, we doubled it, now we got insomnia and agitation. There's way too many powerful drugs like Risperidol being given out like candy, where on some of these older children and teenagers, or even adults, a little tiny bit of Zoloft or Prozac can take the edge off that anxiety and just work wonders.
Is this your favorite thing to do now, talking, public speaking?
Well, actually, the most funnest things. On this trip, I went to a turkey plant and I went out to a pork plant, and I had a really fun time out there looking at equipment and figuring some stuff out. I really like doing that, but I feel that I have a responsibility now that I'm older. I want to see these smart little kind of geeky, Aspergery kind of kids go on and have a good career, not end up in a basement just doing nothing but playing video games.
Now that we're losing the term Aspergers, what's your opinion on that?
I'm worried about what it's going to do with service providers, what it's going to do with all the people that have the label. Scientifically, it's all one continuum. But from a service provider standpoint, a practical standpoint, if I was writing that guideline, I would have kept the word Asperger, but I would say Asperger is not a separate disorder. It's part of an autism continuum, but I would have kept the word in there. That's what I would have done. It's very embedded in the genome. It's not going to be something they can just take out. And if you got rid of all the autism genetics, and I said this at the TED conference in Silicon Valley, you're going to get rid of the next generation of Silicon Valley. Or you're going to get rid of the next generation of people to work for Medtronic. I don't think you want to do that.
No. There's a gift there.
There is a gift there. And it's not getting recognized enough. We've got to work on developing the strengths. Too often, there's too much emphasis on the deficit and not enough emphasis on building the area of strength. Mine was visual thinking. So a good career for me is industrial design. That's what I do, industrial design. Okay, you take your music and math minds, it's programming, mathematics, statistics. And when you design a product, like an iPhone, an iPad, or any of those kind of products, the industrial designer or the artist makes that user experience. The engineers have to figure out how to make the innards work. So you need to have both the pattern thinker mind and the art mind come out with a beautiful product like the iPad.